So thank you for joining us today. I'm Sasha Herzig. I'm a fiduciary strategist at KeyBank, and I'm also a board member of the Art Center. And we're here today for our Sessions Online program with James Barker of Forts Ferry Farm. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So why don't you tell me a little bit about your background? Where did you grow up? Where did you attend undergrad? And how did you get involved in the creative arts?
Sure. So I am from Ohio originally. I grew up in a pretty traditional farm community out in the sticks. We didn't have really any art scene out there. My parents, although were super fostering of trying a lot of different things. So I was always tinkering with things and building things, but never really thought of it as creative expression. And then I went to school originally for physical therapy, and I think I was probably too young. I didn't have the wherewithal to stick with the hard sciences and math and everything like that. And so I was kind of getting ready to drop out of school. I was just gonna figure it out for the time being. And right before I did my last semester, I took some creative writing classes, and I took a foundations 3D class, and I took a philosophy class, and it kind of blew open my mind and for all of these different possibilities. And it was super exciting. And I killed my foundations class. It was I was kind of accustomed to thinking in these 3D ways and tinkering with things and building things. So my professor at the time invited me back she was a ceramics professor, actually. Her name's Alex Hibbett. And she invited me back to a ceramics class that following fall. And so I did. This was at Ohio University. This program, the ceramics program at OU, is pretty conceptually heavy. Unlike a lot of other sort of traditional ceramics classes where it's just make pots, throw things on the wheel or whatever. Mm-hmm. This was very much let's talk about ideas. Let's think critically about what you're making, how it affects the world. None of this stuff that we're making lives in a vacuum. So I'm trying to really dig into the implications of it. So I was pretty deeply steeped in conceptual art from the first real art class I took. I think I was 21 at that time. I was just totally fell in love with it. And I finished my BFA at OU. I went on to do a post-bac program at the University of Montana. I studied with a professor there who I was really interested in working with. And all this while I was kind of building a portfolio. I knew I wanted to go to grad school. So I finished my BFA from OU in 2012. I had some really fantastic mentors while I was there, in grad students primarily. So I knew I was kind of interested in this graduate track. So in order for me to get there, I knew I needed to build a portfolio and connect with some of the community. So I went on for a post-bac program at the University of Montana and studied with a professor there. Made some work. I got a solo show at this really cool little gallery called the Frontier Space in downtown Missoula. And then I went on to do another post-bac program at Kansas State University, just making a ton of work, exploring and getting good critical feedback and making a lot of images to build my portfolio up. So then I eventually got into grad school at Alfred University in 2014. Went there for 2 years. It's a super awesome ceramics school. It pushed me in a lot of different ways. I ended up with a solo show to finish up there, and I taught some classes, and it was just a really kind of an amazing experience. So I finished up my MFA from Alfred in 2016, and I went on to teach at adjunct at Ohio State University in ceramics. Taught a couple of classes there, and it was a total grind. I was also working full-time at this museum builder company. So we're making these really beautiful high craft museum displays. So I was like getting all of these different experiences, like education and just like fine tuning my craft, making things. And all the while trying to maintain a studio practice, which is like nearly impossible.
Mm-hmm.
so, um, so it's always, ever since grad school, which was really the only dedicated period of time where I've just been able to like make work. It's always been a juggle trying to make work and have a job and make money. It's always a negotiation. I finished up my time there and I went and took a job at the University of Michigan as an exhibitions coordinator and preparator at the Stamp School of Art and stayed there for a little while. And then my brother and sister-in-law started this farm, Forts Ferry Farm, in Latham, New York. I just needed a change of pace. Academia was kind of like burning me out. So I made a big move and came out here. And my first year here, I was really just farming. I was helping John, and it's not really my expertise. I have some experience growing. I've worked in some greenhouses, but it's just a whole new beast for me. So started off farming just strictly in the field, all the while trying to make pots, make things that I was kind of interested in. And then most recently, they offered me partnership in the company so that we can, try to build this business out to be something really beautiful and important for the community. So that's where I am.
So you had made a comment previously that you don't like to define yourself as a potter. Why is that? And do you think that that has something to do with your undergrad experience?
Probably, yeah. I know so many potters. I know so many like people that are like amazing potters. That's what they do. It's always been like, I love making pots. I love making things that are functional, things that are useful or elevate people's experience and using functional wares. But I've never quite felt comfortable calling myself that. It took me a while to call myself an artist, honestly. It took me, I had to get an MFA to be able to call myself an artist. So it's always been a tough thing for me to give myself that. I also just hate like boxing myself into any one defined thing. I just want to do my own thing, and whatever anybody wants to call me is fine with me. But
just not a potter.
Yeah. Although I do love making pots, and clay is so good at it. Like ceramics is like it does that so well. So
why did you choose clay over some other medium?
Clay is has such an immediacy to it. The second you touch it, you're molding it. It's adapting to your hand. It has this really incredible thumbprint of like anything you do to it, it receives. Much different than a lot of other mediums, like metal or glass, or maybe even painting in some ways, where it takes, I don't know, somewhat of a plan. Ceramics is like the second you touch it is just like it's so seductive in that way. I also loved it as a challenge that when you bring up the idea of ceramics, everyone automatically thinks pots. Everyone automatically thinks or maybe statues or something like that. But clay can become anything. The roof tiles on the Sydney Opera House or the nose cone of a spaceship is ceramic. So, and I think that's really incredible. And so it can take so many different forms. And so I was really invested in figuring out what ceramics is really good at and expounding upon that a little bit and trying to find my voice in it too.
So why don't you share with us a little bit more about your process in terms of making ceramics?
I just love making things. So my process is really kind of, maybe I'll have an idea pop into my head or something, or I often make lists of things that I love to make or want to make, or ideas that I want to rip off. so then I just go and start making things, and I like to work in series. So I'll make a little series of things and in that series I will make different iterations of an object or a form or a use. So that's always kind of an interesting way for me to like evolve ideas like really quickly. Also, like ceramics sometimes is not good for certain things, so I just can scrap that, and you find a different material that might work better to express an idea. Ceramics is really heavy, it's really fragile. It takes a lot of craft and care to make it, so it doesn't crack or blow up in a kiln or whatever. So sometimes I'll use things like paper mache or wood or digital print, or a lot of different kinds of materials that might express an idea a little differently. There are a lot of really incredible artists that can like make ceramics do like crazy things, but I've always been a little more interested in using it for what it's really good at, and then finding these other materials or other processes to express different ideas.
Yeah, so what are some of your inspirations when you're creating your work?
So coming from the like rural Ohio, we grew up around a lot of farms that just sort of like tinker with objects that need to perform a function. And I've always been like super drawn to those objects born of necessity. So things that are like that you just like they have to perform a function. They don't have to look pretty, but they need to work well. And so I was always really interested in that growing up, and I think that that has found its way into my work a little bit. Objects born of necessity, objects born of utility. I've also grew up. My mom always took us to the Kentucky folk art festivals. So I got really steeped in like Kentucky folk art and a lot of like outsider art. It's always been in the back of my mind. I'm very much not an outsider artist. I'm like, I have an academic pedigree, but I love those. There's a real seduction to those artists that can like need to express an idea, and they do it regardless of whether it's going to get into a show or get on the front page of Sculpture magazine or something. But it's really just like the innate desire to make something. So I'm really interested in that. And I'm also just always interested in landscape. I've moved around a lot. So I've always been drawn to landscape and people's relationship to landscape and vernacular architectures and how people manicure their lawns, create their own little utopias around them. Kind of a mainstay with all of my work is landscape and the idea of place or home or nostalgia.
So it sounds like you have had an interest in sort of blending farming or landscape, as you say, and ceramics, but how have you been able to do that with Forts Ferry Farm?
We grow food here at the farm. That's kind of like the keystone of the operation. Is we're a produce farm, so we grow food. My brother and sister-in-law both have culinary backgrounds, so and a lot of the folks that work at the farm also have culinary backgrounds. So it's very much like food forward. And me with a ceramics background, it's been a kind of an interesting fit to like make pots that maybe help elevate those culinary experiences. A lot of the food that we do grow, a lot of the vegetables that we grow are kind of interesting or weird or not very commonplace. We grow everything's heirloom. Everything is kind of harvested at peak flavor, not necessarily like big giant eggplants or perfectly red tomatoes. So they're kind of interesting, and I really like the idea that those things are kind of unique, and they have a really special moment where you can try something that you've maybe never had before, or maybe that doesn't quite fit the idea of what it should look like, but tastes better than you've ever had before. And using ceramics as a pedestal for those things. So I've been really interested in making pots for food.
So what attracted you to the capital region when you were moving here?
Well, I think first off, I really love the proximity to places like Boston, New York City, Montreal. It's just in this like equidistant location to all of these really like important cultural meccas. But I don't think I necessarily wanted to live in those places. So it was like a kind of a perfect middle ground to be able to travel down there or be able to experience the trickle from those places. It also just seemed like such an interesting kind of place to be a part of. Like coming to, I live in Troy, so living in Troy and seeing some really interesting things going on there. Some really great restaurants. The art scene seems like it's doing pretty well, and to try to be a part of that seemed like such a great opportunity. And to be a part of this business and like help make those connections to the broader region that I think this business has like such cool things to offer, and to hopefully be a part of the greater flavor of the capital region, I think is just like such an exciting prospect. So yeah, I think it's just like it's a really exciting place to be.
The capital region has definitely transformed, especially in the last 10 years. And I think the arts community has really grown. There's a lot of creative entrepreneurs here. So when you moved here, how did you feel like you were integrated into the arts community?
Last year, at least, we tasked ourselves with really like reaching out and collaborating with as many small businesses as we possibly could, and tapping into that creative network, hosting interesting parties or collaborations with other businesses, going to gallery openings and meeting people. Of course, like social media has played a huge role in how I have tapped into the local art scene, finding those really interesting artists that are around the region. But I do feel like I kind of have a leg up being a part of this business, and it's kind of my job to like make these connections beyond just my personal interests. So yeah. It's a kind of a big undertaking, but my commitment to being here has given me a lot of momentum to try to figure it out.
So one final question: how has COVID-19 impacted your work? And if it has, in what ways?
It has affected us in like so many different ways. We've really had to kind of dial back a lot of the ideas that we have of like how to grow and prosper and reach new communities and make really interesting content for the community. My work has kind of like slowed down quite a bit because we've had to basically redo our entire business. We've taken a pretty solid business that we have in our physical market and turned everything online, which was kind of a gigantic undertaking, and we're still in the process of. So all of the products, ceramics, the food element of the farm, all of our produce, live plants, we basically put on our website. It's a really cool opportunity too, because as a business owner, this idea was presented to me a long time ago, but online sales is like such an interesting thing. You can make money and provide people services like 24/7.
Right.
Like 2 a.m. when somebody's like up Googling, they can find your website and tap into that. And I think that's a really cool idea. What really sucks about it is for us is we really wanted to be a hub in the community, and people can come and experience, fresh open air of the farm as it's meant to be experienced, walking around and seeing the food that we're growing, that they're consuming. We've had to kind of put a stop to that right for the moment, just because we want to keep our employees safe and the community safe. So we've had to kind of dial that back, and hopefully we will slowly be able to get back to that. But for now, we've just kind of had to figure out really safe ways to move forward and, give people good products, and hopefully those experiences will kind of come back in time.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Super excited to be a part of the community, and I've only been here a couple of years, but like I love all of the work that the Arts Center of the Capital Region's been doing. So
yeah, we hope to see you there soon.